Tell you a little about our speaker today. Again, his name is Mark Christian. He was born and raised in the Chicago suburbs by two deaf parents. His unique background gave him firsthand insight into how hearing loss impacts communication and personal relationships. This led to his interest in learning more about hearing as he pursued a speech and hearing bachelor's degree and audiology master's degree from the University of Illinois in Champaign. In 2007, he completed his doctorate of audiology from the Salles University in Pennsylvania. Probably didn't pronounce that right. Okay. He's a specialist in evaluation, habilitation, and rehabilitation of those whose communication disorders center in whole or in part hearing functions. Audiologists are autonomous and professionals who identify, assess, and manage disorders of audiology, balance, and other neutral systems. He is a person qualified by master's degree in audiology, licensed by the state where applicable, and practicing within the scope of his license. So without further ado, I want to bring in Dr. Mark Christian.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. It's all yours.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for having me. I appreciate it. Obviously, I have to ask, everybody can hear me okay? Wonderful. Well, I hope I can keep up with the excitement. I love the golf talk, the food. Got mobsters next week. Ears seems like a little bit of a letdown, but I'm going to do my best. I do have a little bit of a passion for hearing, as he explained. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. On the left, there's my family. It's my wife. Anniversary was 19 years. We met at U of I, and we've been together almost 30 years. So there's a little time there before we got married. But on the bottom right are my mom and dad. So they're the ones that kind of obviously drove me to follow a path down audiology. And I'll say this, I didn't know it growing up. I didn't know I was destined to be an audiologist. But when I was going through college, I was trying to understand more about hearing loss and understand why my parents were deaf. And I took a class in audiology, and it really made a lot of sense. So for who's wondering, my mom was born deaf, her and her brother. It's a genetic condition. We have some family on that side that has hearing loss as well. Their parents were hearing, but they were both born deaf. She was born in Buffalo, New York. My dad is from Chicago, born and raised here. Now, this is going back 88 years ago, but for all we know, he had hearing when he was born, but he had whooping cough. And that was one of the main, he was healthy otherwise, but lost his hearing. And so, obviously I didn't know my dad back then, but growing up, back in the 30s and 40s, there's a different mindset with hearing back then. You guys are familiar with the terms, they would call them deaf and dumb, deaf and mute, and so on. Obviously very offensive now, but this was common terms back then. And the doctors would tell his mom, hey, don't teach him how to sign. He needs to learn how to lip read and be part of the community. And I can only imagine it had to be very isolating, as he was growing up. He was forced, it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to just see what's going on. And so when he got to high school, he went to Bell School in the city. Has a hearing impaired program. And then he went downstate to Jacksonville, Illinois. There's a school for the deaf. And that's where he developed sign language, and that really became their identity. So the deaf community is very tight. My parents, their social network are deaf individuals. We grew up going to a church for the deaf, and that's where we did all of our gatherings with every holidays, all our gatherings. And honestly, that was very normal for me growing up. I didn't think anything different. My parents were awesome. They were active. They were involved. They raised 3 kids. We're all hearing because it's not genetic on my dad's side. None of us got it. But they put all of us through school. They did a great job. Where I saw the hearing loss really have a dramatic impact is at this stage of life. When they hit their 80s, it became difficult. A lot of their friends incurring more health issues, passing on. and their network has become smaller and smaller. The Church for the Deaf is still there. It's on the northwest side of Chicago, but it's a very small congregation right now. My mom, she developed Parkinson's disease when she was about 77. And she, did okay, but as we know, it's progressive. And right before COVID, it became very difficult. She developed dementia, and we had to put her into memory care. And then COVID hit, and that was really difficult because here's my mom in a memory care unit. Every person is wearing a mask. Nobody knows how to sign, and we can't get into her to talk to her. We're going through windows. And so you can imagine just how disconnected she was from everything that was going on. And somehow, even though their facility was hit pretty hard, she survived. But the dementia kind of progressed, and we lost mom last year. But I'm thankful for all the time that she had and she spent with us. But that's where that hearing loss I really felt was very difficult for her to manage. And even my dad's 87 now, and he's healthy. He's just got his driver's license renewed. You have to do it every year now, right? So he was so proud. He told me yesterday he just got it renewed last week. So he's got a bum knee and whatnot, but he lives in an independent living community, much like the V or some other ones, and really nice place, a lot of things to do, and can't really come down and meet with people. Nobody here knows how to sign, right? Or maybe one or two of you do from something, but he can't really go and meet people in the dining hall. He can't go into all the nice things that we offer here. And so he kind of is more isolated, which is what he's used to, but I think it makes it a little bit difficult. The comical part is there is one deaf individual at his place that we've known our whole life. I grew up with the guy. It's my sister's godfather. They don't talk to each other. They're like the odd couple right now. But otherwise he's hanging on. So as you can see, that's my drive, right? That's been my inspiration. That's where I learned a lot about hearing loss and a lot of the communication. I'm the voice. I'm the advocate for my parents. Who here has seen Coda? Have people seen the movie Coda? Right, phenomenal movie, right? CODA is an acronym. It stands for Children of Deaf Adults. It came out about 3 years ago, won the Academy Award for Best Movie, and it depicted a deaf family, two parents and a brother that were deaf, and a young girl that was the advocate. And it can be a little taxing at times. And I thought the movie hit it out of the ballpark. Laughed and cried and whatnot. So if you haven't seen it, it's a great, great movie. On the top right, my two little men, they take up all my time. They're the reason I don't golf anymore. We go from school straight to a ballpark. We play baseball, football, basketball, you name it, we do it. So when I'm not in the office, that's what I'm doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about hearing loss and technology. Pat, I think that was the gentleman that was the technology guy. Sorry, I think he left. I think that was the men talking about the iPhone and the watch. We're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to the hearing aids. I think there's some cool things that they've integrated with our phones and some new stuff I just learned earlier this week. So we're going to talk about that. Where to start? Some people just don't know where to start. Where do they go to get a hearing test? There's a lot of options, so we'll talk about that. Insurances, Medicare. I'm not going to go too deep into the insurance. Everybody's going to ask me, how come insurance doesn't pay for it or Medicare? I don't know. There's people much bigger than me that know the answers to some of those things. But what are the differences about where I go to? I'm sure you're all being inundated with a lot of advertisements and mailers. You're all in the demographic where all our information is out there, and they're trying to send you to get you to come get their products and get their hearing aids, among other things, right? So we'll talk about that. Over the counter is a new line of devices that have become available that came out about 2 years ago. I'll talk a little bit about current technology, and then a big focus in our area is just how the connection between hearing loss and our cognitive health is really becoming more eminent. A few demographics, some statistics. Worldwide, we're looking upwards of almost 500 million people with hearing loss. And that number is just growing, right? We're all living longer lives, and with that, we're experiencing more issues, right? Right behind arthritis and hypertension, hearing loss is one of the main things that we'll experience as we age. We're looking at the demographic of baby boomers. Every day, we've been in this window of 10,000 people plus turn 65 every day. That's a lot of people. And so that really has been the target of our industry. And nearly 20 to 30% of people who actually need help are doing something about it. So that number is really a big driver of why we're trying to get some changes in the industry. Because when we think about if there's 500 million people with hearing loss and only less than 100 million are doing something about it, we have to ask ourselves why, what's going on, how do we reach those people, and how do we treat that, and why is it important? We see a lot of kids. We're seeing a lot more children now experiencing hearing problems. We all know about noise exposure. We have all heard the car, driving next to us with the music blaring. But everybody's got ear devices now, right? We've got AirPods in our ears all day long. We've got Beats headphones on. My kids, they put them on. They go into their sports. We can't even talk to them right now. So we have safeguards. We're trying to keep them at safe levels, but that can cause and induce hearing loss. Playing them in the band, all those things, and we're seeing a lot more evidence of kids having trouble. Tinnitus, and people know what tinnitus is. It's a disorder, ringing or noises in the ear that can encompass a multitude of sounds, ringing and hissing and noise. I'm not going to dive too deep into tinnitus because it's a very deep topic. Nobody has the magic bullet. I wish I had a cure. I'd be a billionaire right now, right? But there's a lot of things that correlate, and there have been some new things that have come out over the recent past that people are trying that have looked pretty positive in how it can help reduce the effects of tinnitus. All right, so some of these things are not things that are new to us. So we know people with hearing loss experience these other things as well. They tend to be more tired. When you're not hearing well, you're straining more. You're trying to hear what's going on, and that can be fatiguing. And it's no different. I convinced myself for 5 years I didn't need to wear glasses or contacts, and I was in college, right? And I'm straining to see what's going on. It's tiring by the end of the day. Well, people go through that with hearing as well. When they're not hearing well, it gets tiring at the end of the day. People feel more stressed, more anxious. They know that they're going to go to a facility and not be able to hear what's going on. It's going to be a hard, situation for them. Can cause anger and anxiety. They can feel isolated. Everybody's, if you go to a restaurant, you don't hear what's going on. You just you have a couple different coping mechanisms, right? We pretend we heard it, hope they didn't ask us a question, and just or respond inappropriately. People can feel lonely, and so these are the trickle-down effects of hearing loss. It's not just saying huh and what and joking about it, which sometimes we do at first, but we can see some real issues coming down the road. So when we look at the comorbidities that come with hearing loss, there's some key things here. So, and this is, about 10, 15 years ago, there were some studies that originated at Johns Hopkins talking about the connection with hearing loss and dementia. And then we're seeing more and more discussions about how that correlates together. Cardiovascular disease, if you have any high blood pressure, hypertension, you're more likely to have hearing problems. Ringing, we know, is associated with hearing loss in the ears. Falling, people with hearing loss are 3 times more likely to fall. So when we know that our ears are part of our balance and our equilibrium system, that's a big concern. Nobody wants to fall. We know what that can trickle down to. Ototoxicity talks about medications. There's a lot of medicines that are connected with hearing loss. Obviously, some of them we have to take in order for our survival, but I've had a patient who experienced a profound change in her hearing because she took this medication that was harmful to the ear. Diabetic, if you're diabetic, you're twice as likely to have hearing loss. It affects blood flow and circulation throughout the body, and blood is delivered to the ear, and that can impact and cause hearing loss as well. So knowing all these things, why do people delay? This is not something new. People have not delayed treatment for a long time. Number one, denial, right? I don't have a problem. It's your problem, right? You don't talk to me. I hear fine. I hear what I want to hear. I hear all these different sounds. It's not that bad yet, right? At what point is it that bad? We don't know. We know that even a mild hearing loss increases your balance problems, cognition, and dementia percentage increases. So at what point do you have to really look at where has it become that bad? Uneducation, not knowing where to start. Where do I go? So when you don't know where to start, you kind of just delay, much like anything else that we do. We heard a bad experience. I feel like this is getting better. I feel like, I've been practicing for 22 years now. Technology was very different. I feel like there was a lot more stories of people who spent $5,000 on hearing aids and they just sat in their dresser and never did anything. And I'm sure that still exists a little bit today, but I feel like I hear that less. So hopefully with the improvement in how we practice, the improvement in technology, we're hearing less bad stories from friends. This is one of my favorite ones. Who do you trust the most in healthcare? Probably, most likely, your physician, your internist, or so on. And people would go to their doctor in this quiet, isolated room in a one-on-one conversation, and the doctor would go, "Can you hear me?" And then you go, "Yeah, of course I can hear you. Oh, you're fine. You don't have to worry about it." Well, that's not where hearing loss really occurs, right? We know that hearing loss really is more evident in these active dynamic situations when there's noise going on, when we're talking from a distance, when the spouse is in the other room, or so on. And that's where hearing loss shows itself. Now, with physicians getting new people are coming through, we have younger doctors, I think they're more cognizant of what the effects of hearing loss are and what, some of the other signs are. So I feel like they're telling their patients, go get a hearing test if something doesn't sound right to them. Priorities, we all have priorities of what's going on. We all have other issues in our life, whether it be health or home. We got something else that they got a leaky roof. I got the dishwasher just went out. So you prioritize what's important to you. Until you prioritize the hearing, people will delay. This is a tough one. So, I'll have somebody come in and say, I'm 92 years old. What the hell does it matter? I don't know what time I got left. Nobody knows. I don't know. You don't know. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a year. The only thing I can reflect, I use some of my history to reflect on this. And I can remember an instance, I had a daughter bring her mom in, and she had cancer, and we knew it was terminal, but she couldn't hear a thing. And the daughter and the mom were disconnected, couldn't even have a conversation. Fit the mom with hearing aids. And for a couple of days there, she was able to have a phenomenal conversation. Unfortunately, the mom passed away within a week, not because of the hearing aids, but the daughter called me up after everything was said and done, and she just thanked me and was just ever grateful that, hey, for a week, she had mom, and she was able to have those conversations. She was able to talk on the phone with her relatives. And so whatever that time frame is, we have to look at what's the quality of our life, what's the quality of that time that we have. And if hearing is a way to bridge that gap, then yes, it's important for us. Cost, it's the number one thing that people try to go to, and that's a reason why you see some of the other things that are evolving. So cost is definitely a roadblock for some people. So these are the excuses that people will say. If people knew how to talk, kids don't know how to talk these days, right? Kids don't enunciate, or people don't enunciate. People need to talk to me, not away from me. My wife is talking from the other room. I can't hear her when she's got the faucet going and all this other stuff. The commercials, when they're watching TV, they turn those way up and the TV's way down. And restaurants are too noisy these days. These are all the common things that people will share with us. But these are all warning signs that, hey, it may not just be me. I tell people there are some people in this world that mumble. Not everybody, right? There's not as many as you think they are. So getting a start, all right, where do we start? Again, I think the doctors are getting a little bit better. So have the conversation with your doctor. Say, hey, doc, I think something's up, or my wife's saying it. What should I do? They'll point you in a good direction. Talk with your friends. Find out where you go. That's what I do for anything that I'm, shopping for. I'll go to my buddy. Hey, did you have a good experience there? Where did you go? That's a common one. Online reviews, that's all very much available now. You can go, we're all becoming more and more proficient with Google. Go online, kind of weed out what looks like it could be a little bit of junk. But if you see that there's generally a good response for that facility, then you might have a good place to go to. Insurances. So for people who have Medicare primary, if you've never had a hearing test, Medicare will cover the cost of a baseline hearing evaluation. And they will cover the cost of a hearing test if there's been a change in your hearing or health status. They're a little dicey when it comes to the language. So if you're getting a hearing test for the express purpose of getting hearing aids, Medicare does not cover the cost of a hearing test. But if there's been a change in your health or your first test, Medicare can cover it. It did require a physician order in the past. That's a thing of the past. You do not need a physician order anymore. You can go straight to your audiologist. Free tests. These are my favorite. My friend said the test was free. You see free tests. You see them at Costco. You see them at Miracle Ear. Free tests are essentially what they're designed to do, to get you to come into the office. Nothing in life is free. So they're designed to get you there to sell you hearing aids at some point. So where can you go? Here's the different healthcare providers when it comes to ears. Audiologists have a minimum of a master's degree. All of them are coming out with doctorates now. A little bit broader scope and practice relative to hearing aid specialists, okay? Because you can go get hearing aids from hearing aid specialists or audiologists. So broader scope of practice, and generally speaking, audiologists have a more wellness approach. And believe, I'm gonna tell you this, I've been doing this for 20 years. There's good and bad of both. Okay, so there's audiologists that I wouldn't send anybody to, and then there's some really fantastic ones. And then same thing with specialists. There's ones that understand what their job is, and they're really good with patient care, and then they did be phenomenal. And other ones are a little bit more, they got into the business to sell things and whatnot. But as a hearing aid specialist, you have an associate's degree. They can only test for the purpose of fitting hearing aids. And I added in ear, nose, and throat physicians. ENTs are medical doctors. They treat medical hearing loss. When in the adult population, probably more like 15 to 20% of adults. What we do is if we identify a hearing issue that's medical, our obligation is send you to an ENT first, and then find out what's going on, and then send them back. Had a gentleman last year, thought he just had hearing loss from like noise exposure, but one ear is way off than the other. They did an MRI. He had a neuroma, which is it's a benign cyst on the nerve, but without sending him to the ENT, we never would have identified that. They could do implants, cochlear. Anybody have a cochlear implant? Yes. Do I love it. All right. So when there is a limit to what hearing aids can do. All right. Hearing aids are phenomenal today, but we're limited to the extent of the hearing loss. And so the more severe the loss, at some point, hearing aids have a capacity. So we've got about 25 people in our practice that come in every 3 months complaining about how bad they hear. And we go, we know, like we're trying, but this is the capacity of hearing aids. You need to go see, we got a couple of great new young physicians in the area. They're neuro-otologists. This is what they do. They do cochlear implants. You got to go have that conversation. And then it's like, that's not that bad. It's like, all right. And then 3 months later, we have the same conversation. All right. But in the last year, we've had about 4 people that have taken that step. And every which one, you have to understand what they do and what they don't do. There's still limitations to it, but gives us the best access to hearing when the hearing loss becomes profound. My parents, by the way, did not have them at the point they were culturally deaf. It was not something that they would benefit from through their lifestyle. All right, so where do you go? You can go to private practice. I didn't even introduce ourselves. Audiology Associates of Deerfield. We're in Deerfield, Illinois. We're a private practice. We have 2 audiologists. You can go to the hospital. Lutheran General dissolved their audiology program, but there are some hospitals that have audiologists on staff. Ear, nose, and throat. If you feel more comfortable starting in an ENT, getting a workup, a lot of them have audiologists on staff that do testing as well. You can go to retail places. You can go to Miracle Ear, Hearing Life, Belltones. Those are all out there. If you feel it's a non-medical issue, you can go there. You can go to the VA. If you're a veteran that served in the military and you qualify for VA benefits, go. I'll send you there. There's some perks of going. For example, most of the service they provide is free, and they provide high-end quality hearing aids. The downside is sometimes it takes a while to go through that process. But for the people that have served in the military, it's worth it to go. You can go to box stores like Costco. You can go online now. You can go to Walgreens or CVS. The Walgreens in Deerfield, they keep on putting one in there and taking one out. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But you'll find these at local retail stores now too. Anybody ever hear the German hearing aid online? Okay. If you ever search for hearing aids online, this is all you see on the side of your browser now, right? Because anytime you search for something, they put, the memory is stored there. There's nothing special about the German hearing aid. It's just another manufacturer that distributes hearing aids. It's a good manufacturer, but I give them credit. They cornered the market on marketing, and they got people a buzz going. It's been out there for 15 years. There's nothing new about it. It's just made, it's the old Siemens brand, and it's a German outfit. You can go to Best Buy. You can go to electronic stores. All right. So I put this up here not for you to try to understand this, okay? What I put it up there for is to understand is there's about 100 different icons on here, all representing brands of hearing aids. And the way I say is they're all looking for ways to get their product into your ears, one way or the other. Through all those things that we just talked about, whether it's the private practices, the hospital, or online, they're all trying to get to you. The 6 of them are the big ones. There's William Demont, which is Oticon, the main manufacturer. There's Phonak. There's about 6 main ones that have been established for a long time, but there's a lot of new ones coming into the mix. And again, a new one I'll talk about in just a second. that is trying to make their break into it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different technologies and what we know about, what's current in the market today. So over the counter, about 2 years ago, legislation was passed that regulated over the counter hearing aids. So now, if you feel that you're comfortable enough, if you have a mild to moderate hearing loss, you could go to Walgreens or Best Buy or go online, buy a hearing aid. You can do a self-test, and then you can actually go on your phone or on your computer with somebody via the cloud and try to make adjustments and whatnot. That is available to you now. There are positives to that. Some of the positives are it's a cheaper cost than going to a provider that distributes it, right? Easy access. I can do it from my chair at home. I can do it on my iPad and just press go. So convenience has become a big thing. Technology is improving in these over the counters, it trickles down. So they definitely don't have just the bottom of the barrel technology anymore. Hands-on, you can get in there and you can tweak it yourself. And for all my engineers that come in, they love to do it because they think they know everything. I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but they like to be able to get in there and access everything. Telehealth, so if you have health issues and you can't get out somewhere, you can do it via the computer. Negatives. Again, it's just intended for mild to moderate hearing losses. So if you have something that's more advanced, then it's not going to be appropriate. You have no personalized care really. So you're going on your own. And if you feel comfortable enough, that's okay. But if you don't really feel comfortable doing that, you're not going to get a good follow through on that. And the concern is if people fail that, then they're not going to go for that follow-up care, right? So if they're going to say, well, I tried it. Well, you tried it on your own, right? You didn't get it with professional help. We know that there's some best practices on way they're fit. There's no measurements to validate how they're fit for you. It's just somebody teaching you what to do. So there's no validation if we know it's the actually appropriate fit for your hearing loss. And then again, possibly missing a medical condition. So that gentleman I talked about before, where we found that cyst in his ear, had he done it on his own, never would have known about it. So it's a small portion of the population, but it's one of the concerns that we have. All right. So people are going to ask me which over-the-counter is the best. I'm going to tell you an honest answer. I have no clue. We don't do over-the-counter. So we do prescription hearing aids that we fit. These companies are on their own. But these are some of the brands that you may have seen or come across. Eargo, Lexi. I think Lexi I saw at Walgreens. Eargo is online. Bose, the funny thing about Bose, they came into the market and they thought they're going to make this big splash. And then they finally gave up on it and said, we don't want to do it anymore. And I think what some of them are starting to realize is that it's not just a widget. It's not a product that they can just sell to the consumer and provide no follow-up. Because they started fielding phone calls, hey, my hearing device isn't working well. And I think when they found that they can't provide that service, they said, we don't want any part of that. We just want to sell electronics. Jabra, that's another one. You see that at Costco, but that's another, used to be Bluetooth headsets. Now they offer over-the-counter devices as well. And so what I learned this week at the Apple launch event is that, and this was inevitable, but Apple is going to be releasing their over-the-counter device as well. So in their AirPods, you're going to be able to have do-it-yourself over-the-counter hearing devices where you can self-test right through the devices and try to fit it yourself. As far as I know, they just look like the AirPods, with the little white stick coming out. But you're going to be able to do that. I think that's coming in the fall. I didn't get the exact date on it. So we'll see. We'll see if it goes the way of like what Bose experienced, where they don't realize that, hey, these 17, 16-year-old kids at the Apple store are going to be fielding questions from people who wear hearing aids. So that's going to be the interesting dynamic there and how they're dealing with that. So that's brand new. I'm sure that's coming, and we'll find out how that goes. When it comes to the hearing aid industry, getting back to the roadmap, when you ask me what's the best hearing aid, this is the same shtick I give spiel I give to everybody. They're all good. There's 6 main companies that have been in the business for a long time. They all make high quality, high-end products. My goal is to get people to find a provider that they like to work with and trust them, and they can come, if they know what that product is, you're probably going to have a good experience. So I tend to stick with 3 or 4 of the main ones, but these are the latest ones that are out there. So Oticon is a Danish company, been around for ages. The Intent is their newest product. Phonak, this is interesting. If you're familiar with the company Phonak, they are touting a really big launch that just started about 2 weeks ago. This new product called the Infinio. They're saying it's the best noise reduction, hearing and noise that they've ever produced. And there's audiologists that are piggybacking on that. They're actually worn it and tried it, and they're saying it is the best hearing and noise they're seeing. There's some downsides to that, but it's an interesting product. Lyric is a unique product. It's owned by Phonak as well. But Lyric is a device that's worn 24/7. So if I jump forward a second, you'll see, has anybody ever heard of the Lyric? You ever hear the Walter Jacobson commercial? All right. So the Lyric is a device. It's been out for 15 years, but it's worn in the ear 24/7. There is a battery that lasts about 2 to 3 months, but you don't take it out. You sleep with it. You live your life with it. You come back into the office about every 6 to 8 weeks. We remove it, discard it, and put another device in. When it works, it's phenomenal. It's just not for everybody. So things have to make sense. You have to have the right hearing loss, the right hearing aid, ear canal size. You have to be able to get into the office. So those things have to make sense. But when it works, it's a really nice product. Starkey's an American company. They've been around forever. That's their newest product. Widex is another Danish company. Signia and Resound. So these are the big 6 companies. If you have a product from them, those are good. Now the question is, are you happy with the way you're hearing? Did you go to somebody who knows how to work with it and fit it properly? But that's why I say, if you like the provider that you're going to, good, you're going to have a good experience. Hearing aids, so the nice thing about this is we call it extended wear. Again, let's say my youngest person in this is 30 right now. I got a couple 30-year-olds and they like it because they can hear all the time. They have young kids at home. So they sleep with it, so they don't take their hearing aids out at night. They can hear if the kids are crying or whatnot. So they like being able to hear that. My oldest patient's probably about 104. But poor dexterity, right? Can't handle devices, can't put something up into the ear. And so that, for them, it's a perfect fit. This is something this is important to know too. For all our hearing aid wearers, we've made a transition to rechargeable, which is nice, right? But a lot of people still have battery operated hearing aids where you have to put them in yourself, open the battery door at night. Well, some legislation was passed this year, if you don't know about it already, that's going to make it a lot harder to get those batteries out of the packaging. It's a law called Reese's Law. Unfortunately, it's tied to a young child that lost his life after he ingested a battery. But it applies to all button cell batteries, not just hearing aid batteries. And so any button cell battery, you know how you have the pack of batteries, you flip it over, you can no longer do that. You're going to have to literally get your scissors out and cut them out from the packaging. And so for some people, you can imagine it's going to be very difficult to get in there and do that. So having something that we don't have to worry about batteries, whether it's this or rechargeability, is going to become even more ideal as we move forward. So daily wear hearing aids, you put them on in the morning, you take them out at night. You're in charge, or you might have a caregiver that can help you, but they work very well, but they're designed to wear during the daytime. Hearing aid features are endless. They're becoming more and more technology savvy. So they're looking at health and wellness, not just hearing. So these devices now have, just like you talked about your phone or your watch having an accelerometer in there, our hearing aids do too. So what that means is certain hearing aids, if you were to fall, it can do the same thing. Let's say you don't have a watch, but you got hearing aids on, it actually can send a notification letting somebody know that you may have fallen. So that part is really nice when it comes to technology, that we can do it. And I just had a gentleman yesterday, he lives by himself. He's fallen before. And so now he's going to have something that at least it can notify somebody if he's not feeling well. Now, sometimes technology gets zealous. So going back on your phone, on the iPhone at least, it also has sound detection. And it was really excited when it came out about 2 years ago. So it actually has alerts. So if there's a smoke detector, so think about my dad, he can't hear a smoke detector. Your phone can. So if the smoke detector goes off, it sends you a notification. If the baby's crying, it sends you a notification. And so I set it up on my dad's watch on his phone. So because he's by himself, if the smoke detector goes off, he gets a notification. So I'm driving with him and I'm humming along to the song going on, and it keeps getting notifications on his phone. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know." And it says smoke detector going off. And I'm like, "It's not the smoke detector." But so some of these things are nice, but they're not quite there yet. So he had me turn that off after about 10 seconds. Hearing aids have smartphone technology, music enhancement. There's a lot that's going on. So we have some buzzwords in our industry now. They're using AI, artificial intelligence. They're using deep neural network processing. The devices are processing information faster than we could comprehend. And in doing so, it's learning the environment, learning what's going on, and making decisions on how to amplify the sounds. In the end, it's still going through an impaired hearing system. So we have to be a little cautious about overpromising things. So I always have realistic talks with my patients and say, hey, this is what we can do. This is what our limitations are going to be. And your provider should do the same thing too. And be careful when you read all these ads, because the ads you see are designed to get you what? To call, right? Whether it's a money ad, 50 people wanted to look for a new hearing aid or to try a new hearing aid or $500 off. Marketing is that. It's designed to get you to call. In the end, you have to understand what you're getting into and make sure that you have the right expectations going in. You should have high expectations. You should feel like this is going to do a lot for me, but understand that there's still limitations in the end. A lot of our hearing aids are tied to our phone, so we can stream audio. So a lot of times I put these on just for that reason. I don't have hearing loss, but they're tied to my phone, so I can stream the audio. So if I get a phone call or a message, I can do it just directly with the device here. It's a little less cumbersome than an AirPod for me, but I can stream. And so what's more important is one of the issues that people have faced over the years is hearing on the phone. So now we can deliver the sound right through the hearing aids, making phone calls a lot easier. We can put apps on our phones. So for people who are savvy, we can put an app on our phone to make adjustments. For some people, it's great. For other people, we don't even tell them about it because you don't want them getting too crazy with their app. But it's a nice way to be able to do that. I mentioned tracking. We have fall alerts and health and wellness. You can tie it into your health app. And this is a new feature I think is going to be nice. Do we have the loop system active here? Are people have their T-coil on? Yes. Awesome. Awesome. So this is a great facility. You're familiar with the loops. If anybody who has a hearing aid with a T-coil, if you turn that on, you're into that loop. If you go to certain venues that have it, you can get it, right? So the Marriott Lincolnshire Theater, if you go to the theater and you turn on your T-coil, you have direct audio. It enhances your ability to hear. It's been a great system out for a long time. It's also getting a little dated and it's not overly used because it only really impacts hearing aid users, which is a smaller portion of the community. So coming in the near future, and this is technology is already starting, is something called Auracast. And this is utilizing the same type of concept, right? It's broadcasting to the masses. Now it's utilizing Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is using a cleaner signal, so you don't have that humming or static behind it. And it can go to an infinite number of Bluetooth within a range. And that's just not hearing aids. That's for people who have Bluetooth devices. So AirPods and headsets and whatnot, everybody's going to have access to it. So pretty soon in the near future, or in the next couple of years, you're going to be able to go to museums and public venues, churches, synagogues, and they're going to incorporate Auracast, and it's going to help get that signal out there. So a lot of hearing aids today are coming Auracast ready. So we try to use that as it's coming. It's not there yet in most of these places, but you're going to see this term coming pretty in the near future. I don't know. You know how the T-coil, the loops have that blue sign that we have up on the door here. I don't know what the sign for the Auracast is going to be just yet. But that's something that's exciting that I think we're going to have better access to sound. So we're getting to just how health and our hearing impacts our health. So when it comes to aging, so we know that people with hearing loss are less social. They tend to withdraw a little bit more. So being able to hear and keep you engaged, enjoy your visits, that's going to help with the aging. Keeps you more alert. So we talked about being our balance system. So when we're alert of our surroundings, we have a better chance of not getting injured. So when you have a hearing loss, certain sounds, it's not like you don't hear them, but it's the distance at where you hear them at, right? So when you have a good, let's say you have normal hearing, you can hear a car coming from 500 feet away. But when you have hearing loss, that may only be 50 feet away. And that difference can make all the difference in some of the safety from what we're experiencing. Mentally sharp. So we'll talk a little bit about the cognition. I got another slide coming soon. We know that all these things we talked about. So about 3 years ago, the Lancet study published the modifiable risk factors for cognitive decline and dementia. And when we look at the top of the list, we talk about hearing loss. Untreated hearing loss was one of the highest things that we can control that can impact the chances or percentages of cognitive decline. But when we look at some of the other things, we talked about reduced hypertension, increased social engagement, depression. Those are all things we tie into hearing loss as well. So if we can treat hearing loss, we have potential to reduce that impact of hearing cognitive decline. We have to be careful how we use those terms. I can't tell you that if you get hearing aids, you're going to stop dementia. That's a little bit not appropriate. And unfortunately, some places are doing that. But we just know that there's a strong correlation there. And so we know that, when we don't hear well, we work harder, right? Our brain works harder. So I try to make the Wheel of Fortune analogy. We've all watched Wheel of Fortune. When the words are all displayed, we can read the phrase with no energy. When you're missing one or two letters, you can fill in the blank. It took you an extra split second, but you can fill it in. But when you're missing half of the phrase, all of a sudden, your brain's got to keep up. It feels like everything is running too fast. It's working too hard. And that's when it comes to what happens with the brain. The brain's working harder to keep up, and it can't use the processes to store and remember and other things that it can do. Hearing is meant to be effortless. So when we don't hear things properly, we're expending more energy to do so. And then we also know that people tend to withdraw and isolate. So that those are the connections that could potentially lead to changes in our cognition. So what we're seeing, this was published in JMA in 2023. So if those with a greater severity of hearing loss were more likely to have dementia, but it was lowered among hearing aid users. And so we know that there are definitely correlations with the more hearing loss, and we can reduce that impact with hearing aids. So that's a strong focus. You guys have seen more information on that. People are coming in more educated now. I know that. You've all heard these things. We just have to be careful about how we use that information. So at your visit, so what you should expect and demand from your, when you get there. I had somebody come in yesterday. They said they went to another place and they said they never even looked in their ears. I have a hard time believing that, but who knows? That's the first place you start after you talk a little bit. But we do an assessment, kind of get an idea of what people are experiencing. We need to know. I want to know what your experience is, what the people around you experience. So we dedicate at least a half hour to talking about what's going on. A physical exam, making sure there's no wax or anything going on with the ears, doing the hearing test. We also do cognitive screenings, knowing that connection between hearing loss and cognition. We've employed cognitive screenings in what we do. And then also just finding the right evaluation and recommendation. And from that, you have the right to go anywhere. If you trust them, you can work with them. But that hearing test is a prescription and it's valid for a year. You can take that prescription and go wherever you want with it. And it's going to be, you can use that to your advantage. So from there, it kind of ends my talk, but I'm open to questions. I hope it was a little beneficial. So what questions can I answer regarding hearing loss, hearing aids for you? Thank you.
I was very surprised that only one person here had a cochlear implant. Could you talk about that more? Because I thought that's the new thing we're supposed to be looking at.
Okay. So she said she was surprised to hear that there's only one person in the audience has a cochlear implant. I mean, that's actually pretty rare. So a cochlear implant is really the end stage when you have a severe to profound hearing impairment and hearing aids no longer are meeting your needs, right? So you're talking about a surgical procedure, which has been around for a long time, and the methods have improved. And again, when they're appropriate, we try to get people to go for it. But that's a small part of the population. You really don't want to you don't go to that level until hearing aids really are no longer meeting your expectations.
I wanted to make just a brief comment. Thank you so much. It was very informative. But this center has a support group, a hearing support group.
Yes.
The Hearing Loss Association, and they meet weekly outside your schedule. Okay. And I have gone and I found it really helpful. They talk about cochlear implants and things that they bring in people who are knowledgeable like yourself so that we could ask questions and support each other. And it's very pleasant if people are interested.
And they meet every Tuesday, right? No, Monday. Every Monday. Here, I picked it up. I saw it out there every Monday at 10 a.m. It's the Hearing Loss Association of America. There's chapters worldwide or nationwide. And yes, if you or somebody that you know that's struggled with hearing loss or hearing aids or just looking for that first step, again, don't know where to go, it's a great place to go with a group that you don't even, that all shares a common bond. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Could you talk about telephone devices that can help with hearing?
Yes, thank you. So phones have long been a struggle with people with hearing aids because you don't have the advantage of seeing them, right? You're just relying solely on your ears. So you have a few options. Everybody with a hearing loss is entitled to a phone provided by the state of Illinois. We all pay for it in our taxes, but you just have to have an audiologist sign off on it. But it's an amplified phone. So if you just have a home line or a regular phone line, you can get an amplified phone that goes louder than your phones that you can buy at the store. If that doesn't suit your needs, they also have what's called a caption phone. So you've probably seen some information. I think I saw one in the box out there. There's a couple different companies that do it. Same thing. It's a free service, free phone. They'll come out to you, they'll install it, but it provides captioning as well. So if you're talking to the other person and as they're talking, it will caption out on the display in front of you. I get mixed feedback on that. It works and it does the job. There's also a little bit of a lag there. So as the person's talking, it takes a few seconds for it to pop up on the screen, and some people get a little frustrated with that lag. But it's a way to just get a double, affirmation of what they heard and visualizing what's being said. When it comes to cell phones, again, a lot of these hearing aids are tethered to your phone. So that way, if I were to get a phone call right now, I could just tap my hearing aids, it would answer the phone call, and then I can be on a hands-free call right now. So a lot of hearing aids work that way, or some you have to have the phone out in front of you. But being able to stream the audio directly in gives me a better sound quality because I'm using both ears on that conversation and the whole world doesn't hear my speakerphone. Speakerphone does help if you're alone, but it's a little less personal. What else is there? Those are three of the main ones there.
Yes, I went to Bell School also.
Oh, did you? How old are you?
Huh?
How old are you?
781.
My dad's got you. I was gonna say, did you cost my dad's Ed.
But I was really shocked of how much of a detrimental effect to learning hearing loss had, as opposed to the other side of the school, which was braille, blind. And the kids that were blind could learn quicker than the kids with hearing loss.
Yeah, there was so he was saying at Bell School, he was surprised to see just how much more hearing loss impacted more than visual loss. There's maybe we've all heard this quote at this point, but Helen Keller said, hearing blindness disconnects us from things, hearing loss disconnects us from people. And we know that people who are deaf, their average reading level was really no more than third or fourth grade. So when my dad was very educated, he couldn't answer a phone. He couldn't, there's a lot of jobs that he couldn't get because back then we didn't have ADA to help provide, certain needs. So he worked at the post office. He's fine. But it definitely, when it comes to education, it's a lot more limited, unfortunately, with the deafness. And again, just that disconnect, not being able to just carry on, easy conversations with people is tough.
Tips from my audiologist. One is when you go into a restaurant or wherever you need to hear things with background noise, sit with your back to the noise. Don't sit there where your ears are getting all of it. And the second was that you say to people when you have trouble hearing them, speak slower, not louder. Because as you speak louder, your voice level raises, or the pitch of your voice raises. So it's harder to hear that.
And also, it's usually not repeated in that same loving tone, right? So, those are all good tips. Good lighting is important. Looking at the person's important. Getting their attention first. Because if somebody's doing, focus on something else, and somebody starts talking to them, they've already missed those first 2 or 3 words, and their brain is playing catch up already. So I usually say, hey, get your partner's attention. Make sure that they're focused on it. I try to use this. It was a bad joke one time. I just said, hey, get your husband's attention or hit him or whatever. And she looked at me and she's like, I would never hit my husband. And I'm like, I was just joking. I know you won't, but just get their focus and attention. It makes things easier. And so the reason with the back to the noise is because a lot of hearing aids are employing focused or directionality of sound. So it tries to focus more of what's in front of you and less of what's behind you. So if the noise is behind you, it's going to focus on the people in front of you. The reality is, if you go into like Di Pescaro on Tuesday night or whenever you guys are going, it's probably a busy place. There's a lot of noise going on. There's nothing that makes all the noise disappear. I wish that was true. We can't make the noise disappear and only hear the person talking. But there are a lot of processes in place to try to improve and try to mitigate that noise and key in on that speaker. And that's what we're seeing, the improvements in these growing technologies.
I'm wearing a hearing amplifier. Can you tell us the difference between what they call a hearing aid and as opposed to what I'm wearing now, which is a hearing amplifier.
So the difference between a hearing amplifier and a hearing aid, a hearing amplifier is a non-prescriptive device. It's just gonna raise all the sound louder or softer. Whereas a hearing aid, whether it's over the counter or prescriptive, is gonna be more fine-tuned to the hearing loss. Most of us don't have a hearing loss that's just flat. Most of us, we hear certain sounds, we don't hear other sounds. Like there's a phone ringing right there, and I don't care. I'm not trying to pick on somebody, but if certain people like they won't hear that sound because it's more of a higher pitched sound. Whereas they might hear, I can hear the water running, or I can hear the car go by. So hearing aids are fine tuned to pick up certain dynamic sounds, whereas amplifiers just make everything louder and softer. So while it can help what you're missing here, it can over amplify other things and make it a little annoying as well.
We know a lot of people who go into Costco and spend $5,000 for a hearing aid, and they tell us they still don't hear that well. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a solution or.
Right. So you said, I've known people that spent a lot of money and they still don't hear very well wherever they go. Right. Everybody's got, again, this comes down to expectations, trying to understand what your path is, what's going on, where you are in your hearing loss journey. Like, is it really how it's impacting you, and trying to create realistic expectations. Like if you expect that you're going to hear like your 10-year-old grandson again, you're going to be disappointed. If you expect that, hey, I don't hear as well, and all of a sudden I can hear that speaker a lot more clearly, or when I'm at the dinner table, I'm picking up 70% instead of 30%, then you're going to have some benefit to it. So, I liken it to other things, right? A lot of us either had or know people that have had a hip replacement or a knee replacement or so on. And most of us can't run the 7-minute mile like we did when we were 15, but we can walk pain-free, or we can walk without the worry of falling. And so if that's what that knee replacement did, or the hip replacement, that was valuable. So when you look at what the hearing aids do versus what they don't do, you're going to have some good success with it.
I've seen advertised on the internet a headset that uses a bone conduction technology. Now, this is marketing on the internet, so I have a lot of skepticism about it. But could you discuss what they're doing with that and how that might relate to hearing loss? It's not advertised for hearing loss.
Right.
It's just advertised as a headset.
Yeah, they have bone conduction headsets. There's certain instances, like when it comes to hearing loss, there are certain people that have medical issues with the ears. Their eardrums, they had like a mastoid when they were younger, and the doctor took out their eardrum or whatnot. And so they don't have a good auditory system out here, or they get a lot of drainage or ear infections. So your mastoid bone is right behind your ear, and that's what houses the inner ear. And so if it puts it directly, it bypasses the bones of the ear and the eardrum, and it can deliver a good sound. You don't see it used very frequently with hearing aids anymore unless you have that medical issue. But I've seen some people wearing for swimming, underwater swimming. I've seen swimmers have those on because they don't have to have any, they can put earplugs in and it can just have the sound delivered via the bone conduction. But most people with hearing loss are not using that.
Hi, great presentation. You covered a lot of ground today. The lady in the front who referenced the group that meets here on Mondays, we talk about all this stuff, and I cannot overstate how important it is to those of us that go to this group. We cover a lot of ground as well. So, and I'm the one that has bilateral cochlear implants. If anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, I'd be happy to hang around. And please join us on Monday mornings for sound off meetings. There's more information about our group in a window just beyond the gift shop. So, check us out sometime.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so you can see, I mean, obviously, her speech is, a lot of people with hearing loss have impaired speech. Sounds great, right? And she's able to, how did you feel with the presentation? Were you able to hear majority of it and interact? Right. So with that profound hearing loss, the cochlear implant allowed her to be able to, participate. But some people with profound hearing loss, if they need it and don't go for it, they'd be sitting there and picking up about 50% of what's being said or less. So they could be very successful when needed. But I think the group is a great thing, just a great place to start if you need some support. Monday mornings, you said, right? 10 o'clock, I think. I think it was 10 or 11 o'clock on Monday mornings here for the support group.
I have a mahjong club in my house. One of our members is profoundly deaf and we have to scream across the table. And then she turns around and gets in her car and drives down the street. You know, the thing is that she can't hear the traffic around her. And it should be to some degree of the responsibility of the DMV that people have to be able to hear to a certain level to be able to drive. I mean, she can't hear across the table.
Right. I agree to a certain extent, but if you heard me, my parents are congenitally deaf, and I don't know a safer driver than my dad. Like he was 87 years old, drove his whole life. I think the difference with my parents is they never had hearing. Okay, so if you don't have hearing, you don't go through that loss. You don't know what it's like to use it. You don't know what it's like to lose it. I liken that to like somebody who had, born with one arm. If you only had one arm, you never knew what it's like to have two arms. But if you go, you had that one surfer girl that had her arm bit off by a shark, and all of a sudden she had to relearn life, right, and adapt to one arm. So when it comes to hearing, the people that we work with generally have a different experience, right? They're losing their hearing. It's a different loss. And yes, I think there is some safety concerns with that. It's not a prohibitive to driving though. But when it comes to that, you have to be a lot more conscientious and aware of your environment and surroundings for sure. But that's somebody who should at least, and that's where hearing aids can help as well. Maybe, being a lot more aware of what's going on, whether she wears them or not, I don't know.
Just one point, I'm one of those fortunate VA guys, who got serviced by the VA and have a extraordinary hearing because of it. And I've run across veterans who don't want to go to the VA to get their ears fixed, and they just keep putting it off and putting it off. It's a great waste. It's like throwing gold away. It's absolutely beautiful. And the VA in this area has been extraordinary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So you're talking about the VA is wonderful. Again, they employ high audiologists. They only work with the best technology from the high-end manufacturers. And you've earned it, right? You've served our country. A lot of people lost their hearing because of it. And so it's a great way to go. If it becomes too much of a time constraint, we have veterans that do go get them there, but then they come to us for service. So if you can't get up to the VA to Great Lakes or whatnot, we can still help you with your devices if you're having trouble with it.
Doctor, I have one question myself, and I have a couple I want to pick up on Zoom.
Yeah.
The question I have is that how important is voice tone? For example, I can hear, I don't have a hearing aid. I probably am old enough, over 80, to need help and some assistance. I can hear normal conversations, but my wife's voice is lower. And even though
Funny how that works.
and I'm certain I also don't pay attention, as most husbands might have some problems and vice versa. But my question is, how legitimate is it that I'm saying, it's not a matter of louder. It's that your voice is low pitched, and I can hear other people who are just as loud, but their voice is not as low pitched.
Right.
I don't think I need a hearing aid, but it is my wife, and I do want to hear her.
Welcome to my world, people. This is every day. That's what hearing loss. So most people don't walk into my office or like my parents, right? It's like being blind. If you're blind, you can't see, you would know it. When you're deaf, like you're 100% deaf, we can't really do much with hearing aids. Most people walk in, hearing loss is subtle. There are some people that have sudden changes to the hearing. And if it was sudden, you would know it. Your brain would tell you, hey, something's not right. But hearing loss is a gradual decline over years, longer than you even realize. Most people say, oh, it's been 3 years. It's been probably more like 15 years. It just has gotten more progressive. But what happens for most hearing loss, it affects certain ranges of sound more than others. The human ear can hear a wide range of sounds, from real low tones to real high tones. But through the course of life, we start losing our sensitivity to these real high pitches. When it's the real high stuff, it doesn't matter. It doesn't influence speech. It doesn't really impact our day-to-day life. But as it moves and migrates down a certain range, typically it becomes those higher pitches that we start to lose. So just so happens to coincide with female speech tend to be a little bit higher pitch. Children, if you have young grandchildren are motivators. people recognize, I'm not hearing my grandchild very well, and that motivates them to get treatment with it. People coming to me and they say, I hear you just fine. I go, I know, I work with people who can't hear. I tend to talk loudly. I'm a male voice, which is usually a little easier to hear for people with hearing loss. There's always outliers and so on, but for the most typical age-related changes, it impacts clarity. People will say, I hear it, but I don't understand it. It sounds like people are dropping their words or they're mumbling at times. And again, it might be on occasion that's happening, but more often than not, it's your ears don't pick up all the sounds of what's going on. So you hear certain components of the words, but not the full spectrum like you once did. And so, and everything's dynamic, right? It's quiet in here and I got a microphone, so it's a little easier. But if we went to Panera right now at lunch at the noon hour, it'd be a lot harder because all that noise comes in and influences and masks what we're relying on to hear and to understand. I'll say this, if you're over 80 years old and you're noticing a couple of things, the likelihood is there's some degree of hearing loss, right? Whether you want to get checked out is going to be your prerogative, but it's always a good thing to get a baseline if you've never done so. I think that's a great place to start. Figure out where you want to go and get it checked and measured, and then you can have an idea. It takes the average person about 7 to 8 years between the time that they know they have a hearing problem to the time they do something about it, which is not good. and that's why we're trying to see, how do we get to those 70% of people to get them to get treatment earlier. So that's where this over-the-counter classification came in. They thought, well, a lot of these people aren't getting hearing aids because they can't afford it, and so we're going to make these over-the-counter and make them cheaper. Well, we're not seeing those numbers rise. There's been studies done in countries with socialized medicine where people get hearing aids for free, and there's no more usage of hearing aids than there is here. And so we know that that's not always the factor. It's understanding they have a problem, denial, and really, knowing what the consequences are of not being treated.
Doctor, we've had 39 people on Zoom. In the interest of time, I want to pick up a couple of the questions they have. I apologize to those who are sharing information about hearing aids that they like and maybe want to ask information on. But here's one from Margaret asking, was told by ENT that tinnitus leads to hearing loss. You want to comment on that?
Tinnitus, so he said the Margaret said the tinnitus leads to hearing loss. She was told that by the ENT. Tinnitus can be a symptom of hearing loss, not the only symptom. And here's the thing, not everybody with hearing loss has tinnitus or ringing in the ears. And so there are people with perfectly normal hearing that have tinnitus. And there's people with a lot of hearing loss that have no tinnitus, right? So sometimes there's no correlation there. Tinnitus could be, it's basically the brain creating sound or getting stimulated in the absence of true sound. It's filling in the gaps where there's no sound going on. It's a strong correlation, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have hearing loss. So for example, my wife's a teacher. You can imagine there's some stress and anxiety this time of year. So she starts to grind her teeth more from stress, and then she starts getting tinnitus in her ears. Her hearing is fine. But so tinnitus can happen from TMJ issues. There's a multitude of factors that can influence it, but hearing loss certainly is a strong correlation.
Virginia is asking, I have been told you should not change brands of hearing aids. Is that true?
So I should not change brands of hearing aids. That's more preference. In the past, I was always of the opinion, like let's say somebody came in, they've been wearing hearing aids for 10 years and have been very successful. Then sometimes they'll stick with the same brand. If they've had a track record of success, a lot of times these brands have a sound quality that's kind of unique to them. And so if somebody's found success with that, I'll stick with it. But it's not required. It doesn't necessarily negate them from changing to something else if something else sounds better.
Last one is just Howard Bartman, who wrote a lot of nice comments on Zoom, but I'm going to read one and you can comment on it. Cell phone connection to hearing aid is for reception only. You still need to speak into the cell phone so the other person can hear you.
That correct up until recently. So what you're saying, if anybody has hearing aids that are tied to their phone, so here, this came out about 10 years ago. Resound and Starkey were the first ones to come out with the made for iPhone hearing aids. So basically your phone call streamed into the hearing aids, but the microphone that picks up your voice was still the microphone on the phone. So you had to hold your phone right here. That has evolved over the years. So now, depending on what you have and what phone you have, now the microphones on the hearing aids pick up your voice in the conversation. So my phone could be in my pocket. Again, so somebody can call me right now. I can tap my ear, the phone call will pick up. I'll have a conversation. The microphone picks up my voice. There's good and bad to it. It's because the microphone's up here. It depends on the strength of the voice, but you do not necessarily need to have your phone handy anymore. It's a nice feature. Makes it more hands-free.
Okay, we have to call it at the end here. Thank you very much. This has really been very important. We appreciate all your efforts.